So I just watched Ghost World again, and it's such a great movie. And yes, as you can see, someone put it on YouTube, but don't watch it on YouTube. Go buy the DVD. Actually, there's also a Blu-ray. I've actually bought the DVD. I just don't have a DVD player on my laptop anymore. So yeah, watching it on YouTube was convenient. Um, yeah, and I'm allowed to do that because I bought the DVD. But do get the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is of course the best. Anyway, so this isn't because actually this isn't the first time I've watched this movie. I I'm watching this movie like every 2 years, like since it came out, right? So I've watched it like 10 times now. So along with Dark City, this is my favorite movie. Dark City, I've watched like 20 times, and Ghost World, I've watched like 10 times. Um, and the weird thing about Ghost World is like every time I watch it, it feels like the first time I'm watching it. I don't know why that is. Actually, the poster has a joke about it being a forgettable movie, so that would explain it, right? So it's such a forgettable movie that every time I watch it again, I've already forgotten it, and that's why it feels like I'm watching it the first time. But no, that's not it. It's actually a really great movie. It's not a forgettable movie at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't watch it over and over again if I would have forgotten about it. But for some reason, it's such a magical movie. It's just magical each time you watch it. It's difficult to explain. Anyway, I want to talk a little about the ending. So if you haven't watched it, go buy the Blu-ray, or well, if you want, go watch it on YouTube. Sure, why not? And then after you've watched it, you'll realize, hey, this is actually a great movie, and you should go buy the Blu-ray. So, yeah, do that, and then once you've done that, come back and read my analysis, watch my analysis about the ending, because the ending is actually really interesting. Has it's kind of up for interpretations, but of course, once I start talking about that, it's gonna spoil the movie. So yeah. So I'm gonna talk about spoilers now. So anyway, so straightforward movie, it's kind of a comedy, except for the ending. The ending isn't really straightforward, and the ending is also not a comedy anymore. The entire time it's a comedy, and then the ending it's almost depressing, and because it's such a almost depressing ending, a lot of people interpret it as the protagonist having committed suicide at the end. And I guess you could interpret it that way. There are some hints to that. Um, let's recap. So at the very end, um, yeah, the bench is very important. So at the very end, she basically just drives away in that bus, right? And it's kind of a parody of uh, uh, The Graduate. And actually, this entire movie is basically a parody of The Graduate. Uh, and well, it's not just a parody. Well, it's of course a coming of age movie, and The Graduate was a coming of age movie, and each generation has like its coming of age movie, or its coming of age story, because of course, you know, the first one was basically Catcher in the Rye, and they made a movie of that, and of course that's based on a book, and of course this is also based on a book, but of course appropriately, for my generation, it's based on a comic book. So, and this was actually the first comic book adaptation that was nominated for an Oscar. Um, yeah. So anyway, the end kind of parodies The Graduate, and the rest of the movie is also sort of a parody. Whereas The Graduate was like serious, uh, but of course, yeah, sure, The Graduate had some funny parts in it as well, but overall, The Graduate was serious, and it well, it had some, how shall I say this, for lack of better term, some, well, the characters in The Graduate didn't exactly make the most moral decisions. There was some rather immoral stuff going on in The Graduate, right? Um, and I feel that this movie is also kind of parodying it. You know, um, the characters in this movie also make some immoral decisions or some not not so wise decisions. Let's put it that way. But whereas The Graduate just put it out there, uh, this movie is actually kind of satirizing that, and that's kind of what because a lot of people don't get it. What does that even mean? Why is it called Ghost World? Right? They don't get it. That's kind of what the title is hinting at, and of course this was also present in the comics because the comics were of course also called Ghost World. It's it's a parody and a satire of our society, and of our society becoming like that, becoming immoral in a way. So it's not promoting that immorality, it's satirizing that immorality. And of course it's also, because of that, the characters um in Ghost World uh are very, are becoming or at least Enid is very distant from society. She doesn't connect with society. Society is alien to her almost, and that's why she's making fun of it. Uh, Anyway, so in the end, this bench here plays a large role, because this is the bus stop that she uses, and then she gets in the bus and drives away. Similar to the ending in the Graduate, but and well, in a way, also similar to the ending in the Graduate. She drives away to a very uncertain future. You know, in the Graduate, it wasn't sure what's gonna happen. And they still weren't sure what their future is gonna be like. Enid is in that situation. Enid is in that situation the entire time, and yeah, and she never. A lot of people can identify with that movie, and think, oh, this is a great movie, and they can identify with Enid because everyone had a phase like that in their youth where they didn't know what they were gonna do and where they felt estranged from society and felt like they couldn't connect with society and felt like they didn't belong in society. Everyone has a phase like that, so everyone can identify with Enid, and that's why everyone basically thinks this is a great movie, and it had very good reviews, and everyone goes like, oh, this is a great movie. But of course, then they grow out of it. That's why people like this movie, because they feel reminded of a phase in their life that was like that, but that they actually grew out of then. And that's kind of normal. Everyone is like that. And Becca is like that. Enid's friend. Um, she is like Enid, but she grows out of it. And Enid doesn't, though. Enid is special in that she never grows out of that phase. She is unable or unwilling to grow out of that phase, and that's what the end signifies. Um, she doesn't cope with society. She doesn't want to live in a normal society. She is not normal. That you have a face like that is normal. But for Enid, it's not a face. For Enid, she is like that her entire life. And now she's basically forced to go out in society and become part of society and live a normal life. And she just can't do that. So she runs away. You know? And of course, you could interpret it as having her as her having committed suicide. I mean, she drives away in the bus, and it becomes dark at the end. You know, um, the bus drives over a bridge, and then it gets dark. So I can see why some people interpret it as her having committed suicide. But I don't see it that way. And well, she certainly she has certainly distanced herself from a normal life, that's for sure. And wherever she's going, she's not coming back. That's for sure also. You know, but that doesn't have to mean that she committed suicide. It just signifies her inability to live a normal life, which doesn't mean that she's not living a life at all. She just can't live a normal life in society. That's why she runs away. Uh, and of course, this is also hinted at in the bench itself, in the bus stop itself, because it actually, if you look at that, it says not in service, but actually it says life not in service. Here's life and life, so it says life not in service. So I can understand why some people interpret it as her having committed suicide. And I guess, that interpretation is valid, but of course it's not the only interpretation. Um, but she certainly, she certainly uh, starts a different life, whatever that might be. She's definitely going to some other place, not in a physical sense, And if you also notice um, the bus, you know, first of all, the bus isn't even supposed to stop there, right? There isn't even supposed to be any bus, right? And if you look at the bus, uh, it has no markings on it, no nothing, right? And if you look at when she gets into the bus, she doesn't pay or anything, She doesn't say, "Oh, I wanna go there," or she doesn't pay for the fare, nothing, and it has no destination on it, you know. So yes, it's symbolical. She's not literally getting on any bus, and she's not literally, doing what you see here. It's symbolical. And yes, it could be symbolical for suicide, but it could also just be symbolical for her in general, not being able to fit in and fit into society and lead a normal life in society. So she's definitely going away from a normal life in society. She is not leaving. She's not leading a normal life, and she's not. She and she's definitely going someplace where she's not gonna come back from. That's for sure. And that's why the bus has no destination on it, and which also signifies that it's symbolical. Um, so yeah, she's not literally getting on any bus. She is separating herself from her old life, and maybe starting a new life, maybe not living at all, maybe living in denial. There's another comic I like very much, and that's Calvin and Hobbes. And there's this one comic strip where the teacher asks Calvin, the geography teacher asks Calvin what state he lives in, and Calvin answers denial. Calvin lives in the state of denial. And Enid found a way to literally go to that place. So Enid literally literally goes into a bus and literally goes to the state of denial. She literally lives there now. Basically, that's the way I interpret it. And yes, she's not coming back. She's never coming back. And that's also hinted at in that scene with Scarlett Johansson, which is also why did Scarlett Johansson become famous, and Tova Burke didn't. Tova Burke had top billing in this movie. Tova Burke was the star in this movie, and Scarlett Johansson. Who was Scarlett Johansson? No one cared about Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson was, second. fiddle or third fiddle after Steve Buscemi, whatever. So no one cared about Scarlett Johansson back then. Tora Berg was the star, and Scarlett Johansson was third fiddle after Steve Buscemi, whatever. So yeah. Anyway, why didn't she have a career like Scarlett Johansson? She would have deserved that kind of career. Anyway, I'm rambling. What is significant about this scene is that Scarlett asks Enid um, if well, she asks her to call her, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that." So it's reminiscent from earlier. It's reminiscent to earlier in the movie, where that acquaintance that's always bothering them um asks them to call them, and they're like, yeah, we're definitely gonna call you, like, never. So it's so obvious that they're giving a sarcastic answer, and that they're not gonna call her ever. And it's the same situation now repeated. So even though Scarlett asks Enid to call her, it's the exact same, um, well, sarcastic answer, and same sarcastic question, and same sarcastic situation. And so that she's never gonna call her. They're never gonna see each other again, and they're both aware of that. Because they're both used to giving these kinds of sarcastic answers and asking these kinds of sarcastic questions. So they're both very much aware that they're not never gonna see each other again, which is also why this scene is so emotional, and they're aware of it right from the beginning, and that's why they're holding hands. This is why this is so emotional, even though they're distant. uh Even, and they've already distanced themselves, and Enid already said that Scarlett, I'm calling her Scarlett now. um Enid already explained that Scarlett hates her, but even though she hates her, they still hold hands. So wait, boop, 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 boop. Where is it? Um, oh, no, that was too far. Now she's already walking away. But as you can see, they hold hands. Actually, they hold hands for a while. You just don't see it right now. Um,
I think he'll be fine.
so as you can see, they start holding hands, then they talk a little more, and they keep holding hands. Why do they do that? Because they both know that this is their final goodbye. That they're not gonna see each other again, and Enid is of course not gonna call her. They already both know that. Yeah, and actually Enid does the same thing with Steve Bukimi, whatever you call him. She went to the hospital to say goodbye, to make amends, to make sure he's okay, and to and that's kind of what she does, at the end scene, or the end scenes, towards the end. She does that with everyone. She says goodbye to everyone, and then she leaves because she just can't be part of society. So it's a very deep movie, very interesting aspects there. And of course, these aspects are unique to the movie. The comics didn't have these aspects at all. The comics were more like a comic strip. They, it's a, I mean, the comic is great. I love the comic too. But the movie is so much better because uh, the comic is just like disconnected comic strips. It doesn't have um, uh, it doesn't have an overall narrative, which is also why some people feel that the movie feels like it doesn't have an overall narrative, but the movie does. The movie does have an overall narrative, at least much more than the comics did, because in the comics it was just there was no connection between the individual situations they were in. There was no overall story, which is also why the movie feels like it doesn't have an overall story, but it does, and it has much more of an overall story than the comics, because the comics didn't have an overall story at all. So this end scene wasn't at all present in the comics because the comics didn't have an end. There was no beginning, middle, and end in the comics, but this movie does have that. And so this entire end scene with her saying goodbye and so on is completely not present in the comics, um, which I think makes the movie so much deeper than the comics. I mean, the comics already had some symbolism and some deep stuff to it, but the movie is just so much deeper, um, because this whole you know under this whole overlying narrative wasn't present in the comics at all. So I think it's actually, this is one of the few movies where the movie is actually better than the source material. Like I said, which isn't to say that the source material is bad. The source material is good too, but they took good source material and made it into a movie that's even better. And you know that's that's really rare, which is why I love this movie so much. Because as you know, most movies take good source material and make horrible movies out of it. But this movie really takes good source material and makes a movie that's even better. And yeah, I think for people in my generation, everyone can identify with Enid. It's just that uh, e- for everyone else it was a phase, and Enid is, of course, Enid isn't able to grow out of that phase. And I think, everyone can also identify with that as well, because when you are in that phase, it feels to you like you can't get past that. And well, actually, I'm really like Enid because I've also never grown out of that phase. Um, but of course, you can live with it. You can even pretend to live a normal life, and I'm pretty good at that. But to be honest, I've never grown out of that phase. I'm still totally in it. Um, yeah, but you can still have a life. You don't, you know, you can of course, you're still sort of in denial, I guess, but you can still live a life of denial. Okay, maybe that was a bit sarcastic of me. Okay, I'm not literally like that, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, being sarcastic is also part of it, right? So maybe I am like Enid.